We get rolling?
Sure.
Is it going?
Okay.
Break a leg, everyone.
Is it on and going, or do I need to hit something?
Good. Let's get going.
All right. What? Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the Hillyer Virtual Accepted Student event. We are happy to have everyone here with us. We will be sharing a lot of information about Hillyer College, dual admission. We will have two presentations by two of our Hillyer professors. We'll also have a explanation of Hillyer College and what dual admission is by our Dean, David Goldenberg. And we'll also have a student Q&A by one of our students, Jacob Lamoureux. So now I'm going to pass it on to our Dean, David Goldenberg. There you go.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I can't tell you how happy it is to have you join us this afternoon and share with you a little bit about Hillyer College and the things that make this a very special place. In fact, if I asked you, what do these people have in common? One of the most successful trial attorneys in America, the president of a South American country, Emmy-winning television producer, a Grammy-nominated rap artist, one of Wall Street's top advisors, or the CEO of the nation's largest advertising agency. And the answer would be they're all Hillyer graduates. And I could go on and on with about 50 more names of people, and it would be truly an impressive set, because one of the things we believe deeply is that what we do is we bring out the untapped potential in our students each and every day, and we watch them grow into incredible professionals over time. I want to show you, there we go. So we talked about Hillyer in terms of the Hillyer advantage and what it has to offer. And so that advantage clearly for us is our class sizes. They're, I would say, small in size. An English composition class is only 15 students, which means you really get a chance to work with a faculty member all the time. The largest class in the college is 18 students. That's it. You know, you're part of a university with 6,000 students, but you're in classes that have 15, 16, 13 students in it, and we think that makes it special. And the other aspect of it is it's all full-time faculty, doctorally prepared, but they're not just doctorally prepared. They are committed to students, committed through advising, committed through tutoring, committed to everything that makes being part of Hillyer College a focus on your personal success. Let me go to this. So the question I usually get from students is, how did I get here? You know, how did I get accepted into Hillyer College? And it's three ways, and I want to walk it through with you so you understand. One is we have students who apply directly to Hillyer College. That's the only thing they want, and we love to have all those students. The other is that students get referred. And by that I mean our admissions, lots of admissions offices around the country talk about what a personalized attention, that you're not just a file number. Well, the fact remains is in most institutions you're a file number. This notion of being referred says to you that you are not a number, that somebody looked through your file. Let's just say you applied to biology in arts and sciences, and they looked at your file and they said, this is a great student, but you know what? We think this student would benefit from that first year of being in the smaller class sizes with only full-time professors, no adjuncts, no part-time people, and would get off to the best possible start. And that's who we are. It's about getting off to that best possible start. And so students are directly applying to us, and sometimes they're referred to us. But the largest group of students are the students who are what's called dual admission. And you're not going to find that anywhere else in the United States as you go looking at institutions. And I want to show you why. You are in two colleges at the same time. And so that if a student is in dual admission with the Barney School of Business and Marketing, well, you are in Barney School of Business and Marketing and in Hillyer College at the same time. The benefit to that is that you are getting the benefits of being able to cross-list into classes in both colleges. You can decide that you want to take accounting in a smaller class setting versus a larger class setting. So you want to be in with 13 students instead of 40 students, and you can do this in terms of going back and forth. Because you are in the Barney School of Business, you're not transferring, at the end of 2 years, you're not transferring them. You're not reapplying. There's no red tape. You are already a student in the Barney School of Business, and it's the best of both worlds. You get the advantage of being in the Barney School of Business, and you get the advantage of being in Hillyer at the same time. And you have advisors in Hillyer College to help you with our requirements. A advisor over in the second college, let's just say the business school or engineering or education, nursing, health professions. And we also have the Center for Student Success. Center for Student Success was built by our president, Greg Woodward, because he believed that our institution should be focused on your success. I tell the story about when I went to college, my dean got up in front of me and the group I was with and said, look to your left, look to your right, one of you won't be here next year. Well, that's kind of a scary prospect, but it's also a prospect built on the idea of failure. Our philosophy is look to the left, look to the right. The three of you should be at commencement together. And that's what separates us from many, many other institutions. We focus really on support in the very beginning. It's one of the things that separates us from others. We have 3 tutoring centers, a writing center, a math center, a general tutoring center. And we spend our first year working with students on their collegiate study skills, as well as that notion of advising and career exploration. Where you're headed is very, very important to us. And our job is to facilitate that and help advise you along the way. One of the things that we have in the summertime is a 1-week experience on campus. It's we call it the Summer Bridge Program. It's focused on improvements to math and to writing, as well as your study skills. And it gives you a chance to ramp those up before you start college. We haven't set the dates yet, and we'll send to all the students who have deposited an invitation once we've set those dates. But it gives you a way to become familiar with other students who are going off to college, because after all, that is probably the #1 fear of students going to college. Will I know anybody? This gives you a chance to do so. And we give you a chance to meet some of the faculty as well. And what you see here is just a range of things that we do. Professor Bullard, who I'm going to introduce to you, if you look in the upper left quadrant, those are students who are in Hawaii. We're noted for our program in Hawaii, our honors program there. In the upper right column, we bring in musicians. These are musicians from South Korea who were performing for our students. In the lower right, our students go out on the Connecticut River. In fact, we have a course called the Connecticut River where students study everything about the river. And then we have various opportunities for all our students to get together. Well, having said all that, what makes us great, I believe, is our faculty. And so I'm going to introduce you to one of our faculty right now. His name is Professor Stefan Bullard. He is a full professor of biology here at the university. He is a marine biologist. And among other things, why students love this guy is because he also studies disasters. And I know that sounds a little strange to most people, but he studies disasters, natural and unnatural. And what happens is his most recent book was about the West African Ebola outbreak. And when we're done, I'm hopeful that you are going to ask him questions inclusive of a little bit about his background studying disasters. So let me turn this over to Professor Stefan Bullard, marine biologist.
Hi, hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm going to try to upload a PowerPoint that I've loaded, so hopefully this will come up on your screen. All right, with luck you guys can see this. So yeah, I'm Dr. Bullard. So I've been with the university and the program at Hillyer College for 15 years now. It's definitely my home. I am a marine biologist, and you may not know this, but marine biology, we travel all the time. So I've been at many different institutions. I got my PhD at University of North Carolina, taught at Wake Forest, been at UConn, I work at a Woods Hole. And without a doubt, University of Hartford and Hillyer College is by far my favorite. And not just because I happen to work here, but because it really is focused on students, which the other colleges are as well. You know, UConn's a great college, but they're interested in other stuff. The faculty there are mostly interested in doing their research, and teaching becomes kind of a secondary thing to them. But Hillyer is really teaching focused, and I love that. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes. The dean asked me to introduce our Hawaii program briefly. It's very cool. I've actually led this trip 4 times. Every year, different faculty members take students down. It's actually held in Hawaii. This is it. I believe you can actually see my little pointer here. So this is one of our happy students. This is Waikiki, Honolulu. This is actually our hotel that we stay at when we first get there. So we're right there. This is an honors program. Students have to do well in their coursework to be invited. But once they join us, they come down and they take a course during winter term in Hawaii. And we travel across the entire island. We're on Oahu, so we get to see the whole place. The goal is to experience the culture and art of Polynesia and to understand the cultural settings and the social and historical context. And then every professor brings in expertise. I'll bring in biology. It is a course, and so we'll spend time in classrooms. In general, you're dealing with the University of Hawaii professors. These are world-renowned experts in their field, so you get this top-notch education. You also get a lot of interesting experiences. When we were there last time, Rebecca Townsend, who will speak to you in a few moments, actually was able to get us cordially invited to the opening day of Hawaii Senate. And so our students got to go in and take part and be welcomed to the Senate of Hawaii. It was amazing. Just real brief though, I just want to give you a little bit of information about the kind of things we might talk about in classes. So I teach various classes, often environmental science. So just a quick touch on the kind of things you might see. We are talking about Hawaii. So here is the world. Here's the Pacific Ocean, and here's Hawaii right in the middle of it, way out in the middle of everything, away from all other land sources, as far away as you can get as possible. So this affects the biology of Hawaii in a lot of ways, some positive, some negative. One of the more interesting things is that Hawaii has a lot of what we call endemic species. These are species that are found in one place and nowhere else. So because it's so isolated, there's a lot of things that live here. You can't find them anywhere else in the world. Hawaiian monk seals, different birds, the nene, a lot of different plants. So it's a unique environment, and that you'll see things that literally live nowhere else. There is a challenge though. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you can have some negative consequences. And one of the problems with Hawaii is it is in the middle of the ocean. Pretty much everyone traveling anywhere in the Pacific, to Japan, America, Australia, will stop in Hawaii. And when they get there, they're traveling. They're often not traveling by themselves. They might bring things with them, either accidentally or intentionally. And what they might bring could end up being a problem, especially if it ends up being what we call an invasive species. So they might be traveling with their dog, probably not an issue. Might have a cat with them, probably not an issue. But what they might have with them is something they don't even know is there. Maybe rats, or these weird little mussels, or maybe some kind of insect. And what happens is all over the world, as people move, we bring new species to new places, and when they get there, they cause a lot of problems. Zebra mussels are a classic example. These are just little mussels. They're very small. They live in fresh water. Where you normally find them in Siberia, there are a few. They're not around. They're not a big deal. They're just, here or there. They got into America late 1980s, and they've gone crazy. With an invasive species, they've become this massive population problem where there's not just one or two, there's millions of them. And if you go around, you find they're growing, in this case, on native species. This is a native species of mussel. These are the zebra mussels that are killing it. or they affect humans. This is inside a pipe, so they grow in there, and obviously pipes are supposed to move water, but with these zebra mussels, it can't. This is just a pile they remove from a dam. So what happens with the invasive species is they cause economic and environmental damage. When you're way off by yourself, especially if you're isolated, you're really susceptible to invasive species, and Hawaii most definitely is. Now, some might be something like this, that yeah, they're causing a big problem, but others might be even more problematic. Invasive species are everywhere. If you look in America, there's a distinction between an introduced species and an invasive species. An introduced species is any species that's in a weird place. You go down to Florida, you'll find iguanas running around there. There's not very many, there's a few. They're introduced, they're not from there, they're from South America, but now they're there, not really causing a problem. But the invasive species, they're an introduced species that, okay, they're living somewhere they're not supposed to be, but now they're causing trouble. And there's lots of these. Florida has great examples. Okay, there's some introduced iguanas there, but do you guys know the nasty little cuddle bugs that are kind of an invasive problem? These guys, pythons. These guys, they're not so little. They're actually pretty big. Some of them are quite big. They're an invasive species. They've gotten out in Florida. They live there now. They're perfectly happy. Weather conditions are nice. There's no predators. There's no diseases for them. There's plenty for them to eat. And so it's not just one or two pythons. There's millions of them. And they're spreading. So right now they're in Florida, but they could live through a lot of the United States. And obviously, if you got a giant python living near you, it's going to eat native animals. You might lose deer. You might lose, little wildlife that would normally be there will actually consume them. They do eat pets. To date, nobody's actually been killed by one, but realistically, it's probably just a matter of time. We will hear about that at some point in time. Probably a child will be killed by these guys. And the only reason they're there is because people, in this case, accidentally brought them in, they escaped, and now they're living in this habitat. That can happen anywhere, but in a place like Hawaii, it's a huge issue. The weird thing about it, though, is that you don't even know that most of the invasive species there are invasive, because what we think of as Hawaiian actually came from somewhere else. So if you look around Hawaii, you look at palm trees, you look at pineapples, you look at macadamia nuts, and you think, hey, these are just normal Hawaiian things. But they're not. None of those are actually from Hawaii. Palm trees, they're actually from different parts of Polynesia. They were not in Hawaii. We brought them in, and they've gone crazy. They've taken over. So they killed a bunch of native plants, but now, yes, they are there, and they're established. They're living in this new place. Pineapples, they're from Australia, or from South America, rather. Macadamia nuts, these guys are from Australia. All these guys have come in and taken over. Now we think they're just part of the normal habitat, but they're not. And so, just in conclusion, these are things that Hawaiians really want to stop from happening. They don't want any more invasive species to come. They're really serious about it, but there's very little they can do to really stop it. So one of the things we do when we get to Hawaii is we're aware of these things and we experience them either by physically seeing them or looking at the populations they might impact. So that's all I want to talk about. I will switch out here.
Well, let me turn to our audience of students and say, do any of you have a question for Professor Bullard? If you do, you could use the Q&A section of the WebEx in order to write a question. While you're writing questions, Professor Bullard, let me ask you this. You've studied Ebola, and you've studied it more than most people. I think you were tracking it every single day. But what did you learn in studying Ebola that could, as it started to decline, that we can learn from this today ourselves with the current situation with the coronavirus?
Oh, good question. Similar, they're obviously very different diseases. But one of the things we saw over and over again with Ebola is they kept thinking they had it under control. They were dropping cases. There weren't nearly as many as there were. They got down to maybe just 1 or 2 cases. Then they isolated those people and they thought, hey, this is done. We've got it. And then it kept coming back. They'd miss somebody. Somebody out there. There'd be a train of transmission they didn't know about. And suddenly it was back just as bad as before. And so one of the things we got to be really careful of in the modern situation is being aware of that. And we kind of are, but we need to realize that okay, just because things might be going down doesn't mean it's done. We got to be very careful. And again, we kept seeing that over and over again with Ebola. And so something to keep in mind as we're moving forward with the COVID-19.
Do we have any questions coming in from our audience? I'm looking.
There are no pythons in Hawaii. You won't see any if you go.
What's that?
There are no pythons in Hawaii. You will not see any if you go down there.
Only in Florida. I don't see any questions in particular. Okay, then let me say, Professor Bullard, let me say thank you.
There is a question
Oh, we have it?
We do have a question?
in the Q&A.
Yes.
Will Summer Bridge be offered this year with COVID?
Okay, so that's the reason we haven't set the dates. So I don't know why I didn't see that question, but whoever it is that asked that question, it's a very good question, and it's one we're tackling right now. We originally were going to do in July, but we thought that that would be too soon in terms of response back. We're looking towards August, and it might be one of the things we're talking about is doing it the week before students move into the dorms so that you could come to campus and actually move into your residence hall, and you're only moving in once. You're not having, normally students come in July and then they have to go home and then they got to move back. And right now we're looking at maybe just a week before school begins. And that should be very helpful. But everything is dependent, so we're planning on it, but everything is dependent on the Center for Disease Control giving us clear message that it's a good thing to be open. How's that? Does that answer your question? I still don't see questions. Rebecca, are there other questions?
That's the only one.
That's the only one. Okay. So let me go ahead and introduce you to Professor Rebecca Townsend. She's an assistant professor of communications. She teaches courses like Introduction to Communications. She studies human communication. She teaches effective speech. And I'm happy to say it was probably about less than a week ago, she was named Distinguished Teaching Fellow of the Eastern Communications Association, which is one of the highest honors given to a professor. So, Professor Townsend, welcome, and take it away.
Thank you so much. And let me reiterate what my colleagues said about Hillyer being just a wonderful place for students and for teachers. For anybody who enjoys teaching as their primary job, it's a wonderful place to be. And we get to have amazing students. And I extend my well wishes to everybody who's participating today. I recognize you're kind of pioneers in doing a college search this way. So I appreciate your enthusiasm. I mean, this is not a typical way to do a college search. So kudos to you. My goal in this session is to give you a sense of what being a part of one of my classes is like. Obviously, we're not in my home, but one of the things that we can do is to get a sense of what it's like to learn about communication in an introductory way. What's the unique part of a Hillyer College communication class, the Hillyer advantage, so to speak. So as Dean Goldenberg mentioned, I teach communication. It's not a subject that's taught in most high schools, especially in the Northeast. You might have public speaking, you might have a media production class maybe, but the subject is actually a very old one. It's one of the oldest subjects there is. And my introductory classes touches upon all of the different aspects of communication, from interpersonal communication to digital media and production. But one of the other aspects of what I do is I teach in the School of Communication too. And so students of mine who go from the first and second year in Hillyer and their junior year in the School of Comm, they may have me as a junior or a senior, but nevertheless, they'll be prepared for a wonderful connection at the later parts of college as well. And so today's class, what I want to do today is to do some basics of some introductions of what you'll learn about in Hillyer, and then focus in on one particular subject area having to do with deliberation and stories. Before I get to that stuff, however, I want to try a little experiment here. Using the chat feature, I wonder if everyone could just list where they're from so I can get a sense of who's in the virtual room. So if you can look for the chat feature in your session, it should be to the right of your screen. So I can indicate for me, you should see that I'm from Massachusetts. Oh, there we go. Now you got it. Long Beach, California.
Wow.
Oh, another Massachusetts person. Cool. A couple of Massachusetts. Brooklyn. Where else we got? Windsor.
DC.
Got DC. Another DC. Is that right? No, just one. Okay. New Jersey. Ledyard. New York City. Enfield. Near me. Long Island.
Poughkeepsie.
New Britain, Hartford. Poughkeepsie and Danbury. Cool. Okay. So as you see, we've got coast to coast here. That's pretty amazing. One of the things that I like to do is to make sure that students have a sense of who's in the classroom with them. A class is not just an anonymous place where you go and you isolate. In my class, you'll be able to talk with one another. And later on in the session, I want to try some of that feature if it can work. We'll play it by ear. But until then, let me just go on and say that one of the big things that I do in my class, this is the Hillyer Advantage part, is that my classes participate in a national issues forum deliberation. And they don't just participate, they lead these. So out in the community in Bloomfield, Connecticut, or on the UHart campus, my students will conduct a discussion with community members about a big issue that is a hot button issue of the day. So we've talked about mass shootings. We've talked about the opioid crisis. We also talk about esoteric issues like what to do with autonomous vehicles as part of some research that I'm doing with other colleagues. And so the issues that come up are largely student-driven. I'll have students make some choices, but they vary tremendously. And I've seen students gain experience in event production, public relations, group leadership, public speaking. They all put their theoretical work that we've learned in the first half of the semester into practice at this very big event. And so one of the things that students will do in these deliberations is they'll think about with other people and talk about what should we do. Anytime there's a problem that doesn't have a clear-cut answer, whether as simple as should we have 3 baseball fields or 5 baseball fields, there's no true answer. Well, for bigger problems, like what should we do about mass shootings, deliberation is necessary. And so you examine the advantages to any given subject matter. You also look at the downsides. And you wonder, no solution's perfect. Am I willing to live with the trade-offs of what we decide? But more importantly, people talk about values. What do I care most about? We deliberate over personal, family, political, work decisions. And you're doing this now in your college search. You're deliberating what school has advantages and that are advantages over others. We do this when we're trying to square what is happening with what we think should be happening. And we're trying to figure out how we should move ahead when there's no widespread agreement over what should happen. And so now I want to talk about some of the stories. When we deliberate, we're going to talk about some stories. We share these in our participation all the time. Researcher Laura Black says that disagreement does not always come in the form of reasoned argument or exchanges. One way participants in deliberative discussions manage their differences is to tell stories. And stories will bring your experiences into the air as narratives. And when we have conflict, we can often hear those stories. Some scholars look at how we frame stories. So how we mark some information that listeners should pay attention to, this is what I want you to focus on. And in framing a story in a certain way, notice that there's beyond the frame. There's things that we don't pay attention to. So any story frames something a certain way and hides other things. In Laura Black's research, Listening to the City, one of the really interesting research articles, she examined the ways that the stories that people told about the 9/11 incident. It happened the year before many of you were born, likely. Obviously, in 9/11, New York was the site of a traumatic event. And one of the things that the city tried to do was to figure out, what should we do with ground zero? Should we build a building on top? Should we have a memorial? What do we do? And so they conducted deliberation sessions where everyday people participated online, like you are participating online right now, and they talked about what they think should happen. And so participants' stories ranged. Some of them, as she said, fell into adversarial frames. And these frames were those that characterized conflict and other people in a negative way. It was us versus them. In contrast, there are some unitary stories that people told. And these stories tended to characterize people and events as part of our joint problem. The stories that the group members used helped them to maintain or challenge their collective identity, to display community values, and manage their conflict. And so I began to wonder, in terms of what stories you have heard and what stories you tell, in terms of the current crisis. We're facing a trauma, just as 9/11 was a trauma. And no doubt you've heard stories from other people and you tell stories. So I was wondering if, using the feature where you raise your hand in the attendee list, we can unmute you, and what we'll do is try to figure out who's got a story to share, and I'll call on you and unmute you. So if you've heard a story, whether it's about having a hard time getting food, or somebody has gone through a crisis, I've heard stories from students online right now that are telling me about some really awful situations. So if anybody has any stories to share, just use the hand raising feature. I don't know if you can even see that yet. It's next to the chat button on the top right. There's a hand raising feature. So I'm viewing all the attendees. I don't see anybody with a hand raised yet.
Oh,
You've got one?
well, they could. No, it says they could message in and on using chat. If you want to send us your message that way.
Yes, that's another way to participate. So I'll tell you one story that I heard from a student while we're waiting. This is a student who goes back and forth between his mom's house and his dad's house. And he has really good Wi-Fi in his mom's house, but there's a lot of people living there. And he's got a sibling who's 2 years old. And so the sibling who's 2 years old is a baby and is yelling all the time or is screaming in joy. And it's hard for him to get his work done. So he'll go to his dad's house and he'll manage the crisis that way. Any other stories that you want to share?
I'm not seeing any
I don't
up
see any.
yet, but so let me ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
One that my wife says I am guilty of constantly, which is embellishing a story. So, and Professor Bullard is laughing over there. So, the question, but people do embellish. There's the story, and then how they view the story. Does Professor Black talk to that at all?
Well, the way that she treats it, she doesn't examine whether the story is true or false. It's the fact that somebody has told that story. They've presented it as true,
Right.
even if it's embellished. And she's examining, what does it say about us? How is the story framed? Is the story framed as, wow, we've got to stay home because we want everyone to stay safe? I'm staying at home because I don't want my mother-in-law to get sick, that sort of thing.
Right.
Or is the story a more adversarial one? I'm staying home so I don't get sick, and I don't want anybody else to get me sick, and I am facing enemies here and there and everywhere.
Right.
So we face different kinds of stories.
Yes,
Certainly.
we do.
What's that?
No, I say yes, we do, and so let me say thank you for sharing your story today, and let me turn to Jacob Lamoureux. Jacob, are you there?
And he's one of the students right here, in fact.
There's Jacob.
Right here.
So Jacob is one of our, he graduated from Hillyer College and then graduated, he is about, well, you graduated in December.
No, I graduated in May.
Your graduation's upcoming. Excuse me, I apologize. And already has secured employment. And in the field, you graduated out of communications.
Yes.
And among other things, he is the recipient of the Rising Star Award, which goes to the graduating senior with the highest grade point average. And so, so let me ask you and start by saying, did you always start as a top student when you were in high school?
That's a great question. In high school, I was not actually. I was definitely sort of like a middle student, if you want to say. There were the students who were excelling, they were on the honors list and had 4.0 GPAs and that sort of thing in high school. But I never was a part of that group. I was definitely more devoted during my high school career with a bunch of extracurricular activities, being involved with my community and other things of that sort. And so I didn't devote myself as closely to my academics. However, when I made the decision to go to college, I made it a priority to excel in my academics, and to not only excel, but to leave an impression on the faculty members, to learn and pull from them as much as I could. And so that's definitely what I looked to get when I entered the university. That's what I looked to seek out of my education, was not just connections with friends or extracurricular activities, but what was a step beyond what I was already doing and thinking about in high school, which was my academics, and adding that into the mix definitely benefited me.
Outstanding. Let me say to our student participants who are from all over, coast to coast, as Professor Townsend pointed out, that would love for you to go ahead and put in the chat section questions that you would have for Jacob as a student who has gone through Hillyer College and his perspectives. But let me ask you this, did you spend all your time with Hillyer College students?
No. A lot of my time academically while I was in Hillyer College was obviously with Hillyer College students, but there is a great community of students all around campus that are not affiliated with Hillyer College. They're just Barney students. I don't want to say just, but they're in Barney, they're in CETA, they're in any of the other colleges. And I was able to interact with them through all of the extracurriculars, through clubs, through associations, societies, that sort of thing as well.
That's great. So talk about your Hillyer experience, though, in your classes. We've been showing the students who are here, two of our professors Would you say that they are reflective of the professors, or did I pick out of the hat the two greatest professors on the face of the planet?
I can definitely attest that the classes that we just went through briefly definitely speak to the personal nature of the academic experience that students receive at Hillyer. Because, and I liked how Professor Townsend, she mentioned that it's more than just, your connection with the professor, but also with the students around you. It's putting, where you're from into the chat, because it helps connect you with where students are. And just some background about me. I'm originally from Burlington, Vermont area. And so when I came to Connecticut, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know, there's a lot of students who like, oh, I know this person from high school and this person from this school and in Connecticut, but I knew nobody. And so it was great to know that I had faculty members who fully supported me. And then because of the learning environment of Hillyer, I was able to just easily get to know the students as well.
That's great. Along the way, as I understand, you had an internship.
I did. I've had a few. So the first internship I actually completed after my freshman year. I was an intern at a National Life Group, which is a life insurance company. And I had no expectations of getting an internship after my first year of college, over the summer after my first year of college. But it kind of sort of fell into my lap through some connections. I was interested in finding work over the summer rather than just doing nothing. So I was really glad that the opportunity came to me. I learned a lot from that internship about what it means to work in an office environment. And then after the summer of my sophomore year, after I completed Hillyer College, I worked as a customer success intern with Madison Logic, which is in New York City. So I was able to spend my summer in New York City, right in Manhattan, and really learn the ways of the business, specifically for that business, which is marketing, and learn the ways of the business, how it related to my major, how it related to my interests, and how I could see myself reflected in that environment, hopefully in my professional future.
Wow. That's great. And you have secured employment, have you not?
I have, yeah. So I'll be graduating in a month from now, less than a month from now. And I've actually secured employment at that company that I interned last summer, as a customer success specialist, which I will begin in about a month from now.
The statistics for those of you who are listening is somewhere in the range of 65% of the students who do an internship will get a job offer with the firm they did an internship with. So it's really vital. We're in a difficult period of time, as Professor Townsend points out. And on everybody's mind is the investment you're making in higher education and what is your return on that investment. And so what you see here with Jacob is two internships that gave him two different perspectives that then led to a job. And that's terrific. And it is something we're committed to, our Career Center is committed to. But it looks like a student has just submitted a question that says, how did you approach organizing classwork when first getting to college? How did you, maybe within that, talk about the ASB class?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought about when I think about what prepared me for the college environment. It was definitely entering Hillyer and being put into the academic strategies course, and then the subsequent critical literacies class, which are one credit, the academic strategies is a one credit course that you take in the first semester of your first year in Hillyer College. And the intentions of the course is to help students transition to the college environment and to learn all the sort of study skills, the academic skills that you're going to need for the rest of your college career. And I can definitely say those helped me with organization. They helped me with study skills. Even to this day, I'm still doing some obviously I'm still in classes, so I'm still studying for stuff, and I'm still using the same, format that I learned through that class. And I definitely can say from the academic strategies class, I learned how to be a better reader. Reading through high school was kind of like, it was like pulling my teeth. I was like, okay, I have to read Romeo and Juliet, and I have to read this English literature book I don't want to read, and that sort of thing. But it was the academic strategies course and the English classes that I had through Hillyer that gave me a revived sense and understanding of what it meant to read. As basic as that sounds, but to be able to read and understand and absorb what I'm reading, and then be able to do something with it, such as obviously whether you're interpreting it, you're using it in analysis, you're going to do a presentation about it, all those sorts of things have been beneficial, with all of the projects I've been a part of.
I get a chance to visit with alumni all around the country, actually all around the world. The head of HSBC, the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation in Hong Kong, is a Hillyer alum. And when I talked with him about his Hillyer experience, he said to me, I use the skills in time management that I got in my ASB 110 class, that introductory how to survive in college. I use that every day. He says that's what keeps me focused on my work. And he was absolutely grateful for what he had gotten as a freshman in Hillyer College. A student is asking the question. He says, I was wondering if you did extracurricular activities, and if so, did you find them harder to manage in college rather than high school?
So that's a wonderful question. I was definitely involved with a lot of things on campus. The things I was most involved with our Student Government Association. I was elected into the Hillyer College position during my sophomore year. And then this year I was elected into the Senator for the College of Arts and Sciences. And the Student Government Association took up a good amount of my time, but just enough of my time so where I was able to organize my timeline, organize the course load of academics for the week, for the month, upcoming projects, that sort of thing. And a bunch of other, I was a part of multicultural programs. I was a part of other academic associations that really helped me to refine and find interest in different areas. Because when I came into the college environment, I was kind of all over the place. There was 100 things that I wanted to do with myself, but I didn't really know how to refine those interests that I had and put them into different areas. And definitely, to answer your question, definitely the ASB class, which we just talked about, helped me to organize my time to, everyone has their own method, but I love organizing my calendar and all my assignments online virtually. So I have a calendar and it notifies me with deadlines and timelines in case I forget, which I don't usually, but in case something comes up and I forget, those will give me reminders for what's coming and what's happening. That's
terrific. By the way, somebody asked a question and I'll answer it. Does every student take that ASB study skills, academic strategy study skills in their first semester? And the answer is yes, they do. It is a requirement of the college. It isn't an option to take. It's a graduation requirement. So student asked the question, do some classes use things like PowerPoint, Google Slides, Prezi? Professors Townsend and Bullard, do you have students use those tools in your classes?
Yes, in mine, to be sure, whether it's Google Slides, Prezi, PowerPoint. If a student wants to bring in visual aids that are, a pet rock, they can do what they want. Any kind of supporting material, unless it's illegal, you can bring it in.
Unless it's illegal.
I use PowerPoint all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. I teach everybody in this college. Everybody, including its dean, teaches. And I require my students in the Intro to Business Management course to study a company, a publicly traded company, and then they have to do a presentation at the end of the semester about all that they learned about that company. And they're doing public speaking in my class, as well as research, competitor analysis, and they must do a presentation using either Prezi or PowerPoint or Google Slides as a way of demonstrating competence, particularly in management when speaking before people. Let me see if there's other questions. There's another question. Let's see, is there another question here? Do any of you Jacob, did you have professors give you projects that you had to do?
So in related to, coursework, yeah, I had projects all the time, and projects would come in a variety of sizes. Sometimes I would have a project that was introduced at the start of the semester, and it was like a semester long project related to the course content. And other times it was like, small projects. Maybe it was a group project and there's other class members that I was working with. Those projects definitely helped me to connect my own knowledge with the material being used in the class, because I was able to get more like hands-on with it. I was able to think more in depth about how maybe I was going to present it, how I was going to interpret it to my own understanding of that, let's just say a concept or or a reading, or whichever is relevant to the project.
Right. One of the students is asking about how one gets recruited into the honors program, and maybe we'll all chime in because I think the four of us have all been involved in it. But we're different. Most colleges recruit students based on what you did in high school, and the Hillyer College honors program is based on what you do when you're here in Hillyer College. So no one is part of honors until after you've completed one semester at the college and the university. And then if you've got a 3.0 grade point average, which is a B average, you get invited to take a class in the spring of your sophomore year, and it will be humanities based. And it takes into advantage the expertise of the faculty. So if I could use Professor Michelle Troy as an example, she came to me one time and said, I want to do an honors class with students, and we want to study more modern literature. Who's getting the Pulitzer Prize? And so the students in the honors class were just studying who were the winners, who were the writers that were the winners of the Pulitzer Prize that year. And then she did the amazing thing is she sent out invitations to Pulitzer Prize winners, and we actually had 5 Pulitzer Prize winners come to the University of Hartford campus in order to talk to that honors class that had 15 students in it. It was truly remarkable. And I mean, when people flew in from, Kentucky and California and came down from Boston and then shared their process of writing. Then at the end of your freshman year, if you look at your 2 grade point averages combined, so your fall and your spring combined to an overall, if it's a 3.15 grade point average or better, Jacob, what happens?
If it's a 3.15 GPA or higher, you're eligible to attend the Hillyer Honors Experience. In Hawaii.
In Hawaii, absolutely right. And so, you should know that our alumni support this program mightily. The program in Hawaii for 3 weeks cost about $7,000, and the alumni of the college put up the first $4,500 and make it possible. In fact, I think last year, no student paid more than $2,600 for the entire experience in Hawaii, which is really rather remarkable when you stop to think about everything from tuition of a 3-credit class to an airline ticket to hotels and food and admission to a variety of events. Professor Bullard, Professor Townsend, do you care to say anything about your experiences in Hawaii?
You were there, weren't you, Rebecca?
I was going to wait for you to start first. Well, let me address the component that I had a hand in working with. Because of my connection with the National Issues Forum, which I should add is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, I had met one of the boards of directors of that organization, who happens to be Senator Les Ihara, who is a state senator in Hawaii. And because of our previous knowledge of each other, when I mentioned to him that I was going to Hawaii, and said, maybe you could meet for 20 minutes with our students. His office put together an amazing day, and they were able to stay there the whole day, go onto the floor of the Senate, stand at the rostrum, and hold the gavel. It was a really transformative experience. And students told me afterwards they had no idea that we'd be able to do this. So it was really, really gratifying to see.
And the students were all asked to rise in the chamber in front of all the senators, all the guests, the press, and everybody as guests from Connecticut.
It's written into Hawaii's legislative history now that we were there.
The most interesting thing, to be honest, was we were in Senator Ihara's office. There was a knock at the door, and I was the one who answered the door. And I opened it up, and there was the governor of Hawaii.
Yep.
And I looked at him, and I said, Governor. And he said, well, I heard there were guests. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, don't you have better things to do than worry about us? But he came down to meet the guests from Connecticut, which was really interesting.
The trip is amazing. And I'll just point out one quick thing, which is like the dean was throwing some financial numbers out there. It's expensive. And you might be thinking, this sounds great, but there's no way I'll ever be able to afford that. I've been here a long time. I've led 4 of these trips. I can't think of a single example, I don't think it's ever happened, where we've had a student who's actually qualified to go to the honors trip and has not gone because they haven't been able to afford it. We have really tremendous alum that support us, and everyone's been able to work it out so they've actually been able to make it. So don't let that be a potential sort of detriment to you. It should be okay if you qualify. Your trick is to qualify. But it is amazing, and you'll get literally a life-changing experience.
There are a couple more questions in the chat, I see, on balancing Hillyer College classes and other classes, and then internships. You can probably read them on your own. But
yeah. Jacob, balancing, what did you see a difference between your classes in arts and sciences and your classes in Hillyer College?
So I did see a bit of a difference. I do want to clarify for the student who asked the question, because I know that when the dean talked about this at the start of this presentation, that you are in 2 colleges with dual acceptance. Dual admission, you are in 2 colleges at one time. However, for the majority of students, you're taking most of your classes in Hillyer and then maybe like a class or 2 or 3 in another college. And but to speak to the the sort of differences and adjustments between a Hillyer College class and a non-Hillyer College class, whether it be like for myself, I was in the College of Arts and Sciences. Those classes were a little bit larger. The professors were not Hillyer professors, and the course load was just a little bit different. Because I was in Hillyer, I still went to some of my Hillyer professors for advice, for help with a variety of things. And I know that I knew that Hillyer support, even to this day, is still there for me, and it always will be there for you. It's just that you're not going to be having a small class size of, I think the smallest class I had with Professor Michelli, there was 7 of us. And I haven't had a class that small in the College of Arts and Sciences. Most of the classes are between 25, 30, 32 students, around there. So it's a little bit of a larger class environment, which is just a small transition to go from 15 to 25. But the classes aren't like super. I can't really compare the difficult level because it's also like first year level, work versus senior level work, which is going to have a different, in level of importance and weight to it. But the environment of the classroom setting didn't change too drastically other than the number of students and the professor themselves.
Oh. Student asked about internships in terms of physical therapy. And so let me say, students who are in physical therapy must complete what's called clinical hours. And those are not until you've advanced to candidacy as a junior. People may not realize it, but physical therapy is a 7-year program where at the end you get a doctorate in physical therapy, a DPT. And so what governs that, so there aren't what's called internships, but there are real world experiences that they call clinicals. and they are a requirement for you to be licensed. So, but that's as soon as you are literally full-time doing nothing but physical therapy. You could decide to work in a physical therapy office under the supervision of a licensed physical therapist in a summer or something like that for Hillyer College internship credit, but that would not fulfill clinical hours within the major physical therapy. You'd be doing that strictly to make certain it's the field you wanted to go into. Does that help? I hope that's a good comprehensive answer for the student who asked that. Jacob, when did you meet your first advisor?
So my advisor was Professor Michael Robinson, a history professor, and I first met him on the first day of classes. And the reason being was because I actually had a class with him. I was taking U.S. history with Professor Robinson. So I was able to meet him in the classroom environment, and immediately he actually let everyone know that all of the students in that class were his advisees. And he then, through email and stuff, we set up electronic appointments, and then we then went to his office and his office hours, and we met with him. So I would probably say I went and met with him individually, probably in the first or second week, and we really set up a personal relationship for what I saw with my academics. When I was in Hillyer College, especially first semester freshman year, I was very undecided about what I wanted to do. I had communications in my mind. I had sociology. I had politics and government. So I was working with a lot of areas and majors that were on the top of my mind. And ultimately, obviously, I decided on communication. But that was definitely helpful to meet with my advisor right there from the start, because he was able to get to know me. And by having him as my professor, he actually got to know me and what I am as a student, or who I am as a student. So if he was to see within the online board that I got like a C on an exam or something like that, or even in one of his classes, he would be able to help brainstorm with me. Okay, well, what can we do for next time? How could we improve that grade? How can we sort of pivot so that way you're successful?
And I'll butt in here and say what we have within the college is what's called advising sections. So when Jacob said, look, all the students in that class, there were 15 students in the class, and they were all advisees of Professor Robinson. That's purposeful. We try and take areas that we think students are interested in and give them an advisor, and then absolutely have them in a class with that advisor their first semester. The thing we do not want is a student to wake up in November and then sit there and say, oh, I wonder who my advisor is. We want the student knowing who their advisor is from day one. Stefan, you've been at this quite a while. You take a bunch of students who are interested in the sciences and the health sciences, and you've had an advising section. Do you find that helpful?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Professor.
There we go. Yeah, it's amazingly helpful. And in fact, not only do I have an advising section, we also link it to one of the ASB courses. So you technically, you sort of have two advisors. You got me and you got your ASB instructor. All the students in my bio class are in the ASB class. And so you also have this group of students that are working together. So it ends up being really, really successful. So it's another one of those Hillyer advantages that we've got, and we can really, get to know you very well and get to know what you need to be able to help you.
Right. And if a student came to you and said, oh, I've decided I no longer am interested in sciences, I'm interested in criminal justice, would you sit there and say, well, I'm no longer interested in you, go away?
No, so that happens all the time. There was a question in the chat about changing majors. People change majors constantly. So I'll get the group of people that come in that want to do med school or physical therapy or some kind of medical career generally. And a lot of them actually end up changing. Maybe half will decide they want to do communications or computers or something. And so we do give them a different advisor because someone else will be able to help them better with communication. But they still usually come back and talk to me, and we still get along quite well. And a lot of times they might have an official new advisor, but they still come to me for a lot of their questions.
Right.
And vice versa. I get a ton of people that started in communication and then decided, oh, I want to actually go to nursing or something. So we all help out with everybody.
Students ask you for graduate school recommendations?
Oh, constantly. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Professor Townsend, you specialize in working with students who are interested in communication, correct?
Yep. Yes. Yep.
So how does that work for you?
Well, they're great, of course. When Jacob said he wanted to be a communication major, I was thrilled. But there are students who want to do something else, and my job is to help them to do what they want to do. With communication, you can go in a number of different directions. You can work for a large organization. You can work for government. You can work for a media organization or any kind of an organization, or you can learn how to improve your relationships. I mean, it's a liberal arts degree that does have a tremendous amount of flexibility. And since I do manage a lot of discussions, I want to point us to, there's a bunch more questions in the chat.
Oh boy.
And so I want to make sure that we get to those.
Okay. I see fifth session. So
yes.
Students asking again about bridge. That fifth session of orientation you should stay in, and the summer bridge would be right before that.
Right. And then what kinds of things can you expect at the summer bridge program?
Well, we ask students to pick whether they want to focus on writing or on mathematics. And we try and get them off to a quick start with one of our faculty in that field, as well as one of the academic strategies faculty. All the while, what we're trying to do is also get them to meet 19 other students who are joining the university who don't know anybody else. Such an interesting phenomenon to see students who enter on that Sunday and then go ahead and by the end of Friday, are very close with these folks because they've spent the whole week with each other. And then when they come back into classes, invariably they're in classes together and it's a lot of familiar faces.
And then there were questions regarding specific programs, like what classes does Hillyer have for education majors?
Excellent question. So the first course for an education major in ENHP, that's College of Education, Nursing, Health Professions, is a course called EDF 120, Foundations of Education. And the first course that the Hillyer students take in education, if that's what they're headed towards, or if they're dual admission education, is EDF 120, which is the Foundations of Education. And the course for both colleges is taught by one of the Hillyer College faculty, Professor Marge Jackson. So again, it's this crossover between the two colleges constantly that makes it possible. But that's the first class. And then there are certain rules for education we have to pay attention to. Advising is very important in education because you have to take U.S. history. Global history does not count towards fulfillment of licensure as a teacher. The state of Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts all say it has to be U.S. history. And it's little rules like that, which is why advising, never self-advise. Work with your advisor in order to make sure you've got all those things set.
We are happy to meet with you. We meet with you as much as you want.
So the question is, do you guys, that's the three of us, I guess, you guys, offer grants and scholarships? Of course we do. And in fact, it's interesting. We're about to finish this semester. And so we'll have people who have graduated and become very successful, and they go ahead and set up a scholarship. The Mary Scholarship, MEHRI, he's an award-winning author. And whoever is number one in the class gets a scholarship that he provided the scholarship money for. And he was so thrilled that later on he gave another scholarship so the number two student can do. And then the number three student gets the Goldenberg Scholarship. And the number four, it goes on. And so we have a variety of scholarships that are available for our students. And the Office of Financial Assistance takes care of awarding those and working with us. So absolutely, you should always if money's an issue, should always talk to financial assistance office.
And then-
we should hear about after your 2 years in Hillyer, do you have to reapply?
If you are a dual admission student, you are not reapplying or transferring or anything. You were in that college from day one. And the dual admission is with the college. So if you're dual admission arts and sciences in Hillyer, the way Jacob was, and you suddenly decide to go to business, then your dual admission goes away. You're in Hillyer, and now you are transferring into the Barney School of Business. However, don't want to make it sound like it's a lot of red tape. It is a form where the associate dean of our college signs it and says, I'm going to send over to the Barney School your advising folder. And the Barney School signs it and says, we're expecting the advising folder, and you move over to the Barney School. Certain colleges do have requirements on a grade point average. So as example, a student asked earlier about physical therapy. The American Physical Therapy Association only allows 60 students in the physical therapy program. Therefore, to move in, each year there might be about 3 open spaces. So the grade point average to get into physical therapy is a 3.5 grade point average. You got to have an A for every B. And whereas if you are going into education, student had asked about education, the state of Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island require that a student has a 3.0 grade point average to do what's called advancement to candidacy, which is taking junior level education classes. So some majors have requirements that involve a grade point average, but it's our job to sit down with you from day one and share what those are so that we're advising you appropriately, and then you understand then the motivation that you need. If you want physical therapy, then just to be frank with you, you're not joining a sorority or a fraternity because you've got to devote yourself to getting A's and B's. And anything that gets in the way of that is an impediment to your future. And the college and its faculty, we are opposed to anything that is an impediment to your success and future. So we'll advise you in that situation not to be in a sorority, not to be in a fraternity, because we want you focused on your academics. Different majors, different requirements, but for the most part, it is basically open borders. That was a long answer. I apologize. Is there another question?
So there's one, I was beginning to answer it on politics and government classes.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the classes that you can take? And I know there's a bunch. Professor Siku teaches a bunch on government.
This fall, he's going to be teaching a class in terms of the American political system. But the class that students love in government and politics is a course that Professor Siku developed called How to Change the World. Mm-hmm. And you may have seen him. He's appeared on MSNBC as a commentator on senatorial campaigns, particularly those here in Connecticut. And they'll invite him on. He's regularly on NPR. During the impeachment hearings, NPR had him on trying to explain to everyday people how does the impeachment process work and why is this taking place. So he's considered a person who contributes to the national dialogue about understanding politics. So those are, he's a great, great professor.
And in the fall, I'll be teaching a political communication class over in School of Communication. Yep.
I'm the dean, and I didn't even know that.
Well, it just happened. If you wanted your major to be business, how would you apply for Barney? Did that get addressed?
Yeah, if you're going to be heading towards business, you're going to have me.
Yep. And then surrounding dorms, do Hillyer students match with other Hillyer students, or how does that process work?
Jacob?
So that's a wonderful question because when you come into the university as a residential student, obviously there are some students who are commuters, and obviously you live at home and you commute to campus. But for those students living on campus, the housing process basically works as you have a profile online. You once this is all, you have to be accepted into the university, and you deposited and all that, which I imagine at this point a lot of you have done. But you would either you can either choose a roommate to live with because you've met online through a social network, those sorts of things, and you just have to say within the profile that you want to live with that person, and then they have to mutually say that they want to live with you as well. And so that's how that process works. It doesn't look at what school they're in. It doesn't matter if they're in Hart and you're in Barney, or if you're in Hillyer and they're in CETA, the engineering school. So there's open availability for who you can house with. It's not segregated to, two Hillyer students have to live in the same room together or anything like that, especially, and it's not segregated even by building or anything like that either. So there are communities all across the residential side of campus that are diverse in the sense of academic interest. And when I can just reflect on my residential experience, I lived on campus all 4 years or 3 years, but for my whole time, but my first year, I actually lived in Hawk Hall, which I imagine a bunch of you, as your first year, you've already heard about Hawk Hall, but I lived in the Hawk Spirit living community, which I believe they're changing a little bit, but I don't know the details about that. But anyhow, the Hawk Hall style and the community of Hawk Hall allowed me to meet students from a wide range of academic interest, from musical theater and actor training to architecture to marketing to communication. So it was a great opportunity for me as a Hillyer student to just see people and hear about their personal interests in the residential setting. That really piqued my interest, because I was really confused about which way I wanted to head. So to be able to talk with students who had such vast differences, because I'm not that creative in any way. So to meet someone who's an illustration major, for example, was really cool.
You are very creative. Alyssa asks about the summer bridge again. Alyssa, once we know the dates, you've already communicated with Mrs. Fasciano, and that means you're on our list of people to contact, which means we will contact you as soon as the dates are known. You can sit back and relax until you hear from us, but you can be guaranteed you will hear from us. And does it all depend on how you do your 2 years before enrolling, reapply, major change? How's the process go? How you do in your first 2 years defines a lot of things. One of them being, if you want a particular major, have you been following the sequence that takes you to that major? So for example, if you want to be a business major, but you just didn't get around to taking accounting or economics or quantitative mathematics, quantitative reasoning, you're behind. Advising will take the process and say to you, here are the courses you need to take. If what your goal is at the end of 2 years is to have all the prerequisites done so that I can move without any issue between Hillyer and my junior year. And because we're in this for the 4-year plan, not the 6-year plan. So what we want to do is make sure that you're following the right sequence. Where it becomes interesting is this. The art school will require, if you want to go into the art school, it is a conservatory. They're going to want a portfolio of your work. So you can't just say, I want to go into the art school. The Hart School, if you want to go into music, you can't just say, I want to go into music. You have to do an audition. And so different majors. The University of Hartford's really a very interesting place that has 7 very different colleges. And but if you want to go into those 2, they have different requirements than the others. Meanwhile, inside the College of Education, Nursing, and Health Professions, you've got these programs, actually, I'll tell you, respiratory therapy, if ever there's a major that ought to explode with students, it's respiratory therapy, because the coronavirus has taught us so much about the respiratory system. And so as a result, I actually see over the next 24 months a shift of people moving from physical therapy, wanting instead to be in respiratory therapy. And that requirement is a 3.0, and so it's not a 3.5. It's a B average, which you wanted anyway to go into the honors program and go to Hawaii. You were going for a 3.0 anyway. So the key there is, to make that a priority in your academics.
And your advisors will work with you on that. So once you figure out, what it is you want to do, and you figure out what program you're headed for, we'll spend a lot of time working with you to make sure you've got the requirements for transfer and that you're ready to go.
Let's see, is there another question here? And
there's one last question in the Q&A section, and Jacob, I think you might have mentioned this a little bit. I want to just make sure I ask it, whether there's other questions or not. That how do you think Hillyer helped you?
That's a wonderful question. I think that Hillyer helped me most when it comes to providing structure, academic structure for myself, and I hear this all the times from my peers in Hillyer as well, is that it helped provide us with structure that we didn't specifically have in our high school setting, and just the resources, I can say, from Hillyer as well helped me to see potential within myself, to see where I wanted to be and find ways to get myself there.
Yeah, and there's a follow-up. Did Hillyer, and I see the question on nursing, I'm not skipping that, but did Hillyer give you the support that you need?
That's also a great question that builds off of that. I would say for myself, Hillyer gave me exactly what I needed. Kind of when I was looking into schools, obviously I imagine all of you are looking into a bunch of different schools all over the country, maybe even out of the US. And I was looking for a school for myself that would be small, but not too small. There were schools that were like 1,000 students or something like that. So that's where the mid-sized aspect of University of Hartford altogether was nice. And specifically, I was looking for academic resources that would drive me. My parents as well, if they were, as they were very involved with me coming into my college experience, they, we all saw what I did in high school. They knew what I was capable of, but in the areas that I sometimes didn't show that capability 100%. And by with their support, with the support of everybody I met with when I was in all of your shoes in my senior year of high school, meeting with people from Hillyer College and the University of Hartford to really find that Hillyer College had the resources, had the tools that I needed to be successful. I'll also note that when I was in all of your shoes, I visited campus and I heard from Dean Goldenberg and a bunch of others. And I actually was very intrigued even when I was in high school, I was very intrigued by the Hawaii experience. And that was one of the things that I talked to Professor Robinson, my advisor, with that first week of my first semester at the university. Was I said to him, I have all these interests and all that and advising and stuff, but I want to go to Hawaii. How do I get to Hawaii? And that was definitely, for me, it was definitely sort of a milestone of, okay, I need to get a 3.15 GPA, something I hadn't previously done in high school. I need to get a 3.15 GPA. How do I get to that point? And it was also a compounding of like a lot of different things. So there was the variables of academic strategies and the structure that class provided, the help of my advisors and the faculty all together, and my peers in all of my classes that really gave me the support and the strength and motivation I needed to be successful in Hillyer's learning environment.
You got to meet United States District Court Judge Derek Watson, did you not?
I did, yes. Yeah.
Was that not an amazing experience?
That absolutely was, and I know that Professors Bullard and Townsend spoke about their trip to Hawaii just this past year, and for everyone watching, I went to Hawaii last year, so 2019. And it was definitely a huge like moment for myself and definitely my peers especially as we left Judge Derek Watson's chambers, and he invited us into his private chambers after already spending an hour with us in the courtroom talking about his career, talking about what he did, and just a variety of other things, and giving us advice as college students. I thought that trip, the Hawaii trip altogether, but specifically going to Judge Derek Watson, really showed that my experience in Hawaii wasn't just specifically for the academics at the University of Hawaii. It was also for all of the extracurricular cultural things that bring Hawaii, to the forefront of our conversation when we talk about Polynesian culture.
Great.
There was a question on,
yes.
I'm sorry. There was a question on nursing having a 3.0.
Yeah, no, it's not a 3.0. It's more like a 3.5.
Yeah.
The demand for nursing is absolutely off the charts. And there just aren't enough nursing programs in the United States to take care of all the desire for doing that. I think we had 800 applications for 100 openings. And so one must, much like physical therapy, show a 3.5. So then the question becomes, so what about that student who gets a 3.1? It's a 3.1 is an honors level degree. So that's when we start working with students and saying, okay, it's not going to be getting into nursing, but I just said respiratory therapy was open with a 3.0, and that's working in a hospital, helping people who really desperately need help. There's radiology, that's a 3.0. And then we're going to be adding occupational therapy, exercise science, sports science, and the rest. And so those majors, it just so happens that nursing and physical therapy are the two that teachers and guidance counselors talk about in high school. And as a result, I come across students who have no idea about all the other careers. It's one of the reasons why the first course a student's going to take in the College of Education, Nursing, Health Professions is a course called Health Professions 101, in which they're going to cover all those fields so that a student can say, I want to change major. I don't want physical therapy, I want respiratory, or I'm in respiratory, I'd like to look at radiology. We just find that the career information that students have out of high school is usually anecdotal and is not always accurate and is always incomplete. And it's our job in the majors to help students know all the possibilities that might be out there. And by the way, so if a student of 3.5 and the student absolutely positively wants to go into nursing and has a 3.1, then it is our job to help that student find another college that will help them transfer in and be accepted into nursing. We do not abandon our students. It's one of those things, it's one of the reasons why it's the most loyal alumni across all of the University of Hartford, is that they know that we are the most interested in their future, irrespective of where it begins and ends. It's one of the reasons why I probably have 1,000 alums with me on Facebook. In fact, the 26 of you who are listening here today, if you want to, you can friend me on Facebook, and you'll find out a lot about what the college is doing every day. Any other questions, or do we hit?
Goldenberg, can I just interrupt for a second?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm one of the assistant directors of admission. I do just want to clarify for students that as of right now, we do not currently accept transfers into the nursing program, and that includes students from Hillyer. So we cannot guarantee that there will be space. So even if you do have a 4.0 GPA, unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that you will be able to transfer into that program. And I know Dean Goldenberg mentioned potentially transferring to another school. So that is another option, but I just want to make it clear that it's not dual enrollment into Hillyer and nursing.
Right.
As of right now, it stands that it's dual enrollment into Hillyer and health sciences.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else on people's minds? Well, this has been great. We've gone on for an hour and a half with you.
Yeah.
Dean, I actually have a question that came to me privately.
Okay.
I kind of think it actually is a nice kind of ending question. If this is the last question, it's just what personal advice do I have for the incoming first-year students for Hillyer? So first of all, I think I just want to thank everyone for coming and joining today. I think that the environment that we're currently all living through right now is, I don't want to use the term because you've heard it everywhere, but unprecedented. And I think that your ability to, and your motivation to join an online seminar or webinar like this, which with Hillyer College, we just appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that because it's really showing your attentiveness to all of our time. So to answer your question for advice, my best advice is to lean in and like find yourself in Hillyer College. Find yourself in the university, but definitely find yourself within Hillyer College. Find your people, find your professors, and really pull stuff out of them. Don't just sit in the back of class and let the next homework assignment come your way. You submit it, and then there's no sort of like devotion to it. Be passionate about what you want to do. It's going to take some time. Everyone's going to have a rocky road. I'm not saying that I didn't, but if you devote yourself to Hillyer College will devote themselves to you, and especially the faculty. So I highly recommend, my best advice is to just get the most out of your professors, get the most out of your students. If you're doing group project work and you're doing a study group, those sorts of things, get the most out of your education. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because being afraid to ask questions means that you're just going to stay in the same place, not knowing the answer to the question you wish you knew. And if you knew the answer to that question, maybe you would have got a better grade on the exam because you would have been connected with the Center for Student Success or something along those lines. So the more you ask questions, the more you make connections throughout the university and Hillyer College, the better that I find that you'll be a student here.
Thank you.
Great answer.
Wonderful to see you. Aaron Marshall, are you going to give us some final instructions? Aaron, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, so you're going to get the last word, but I want to say thank you to Rebecca Townsend, and I want to say thank you to Professor Bullard, and I want to say thank you to Jacob for your time this afternoon. But Aaron, you get the last word.
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you for all of our presenters as well. You all did an amazing job. But yes, you all can contact me if you have any other questions. If you had questions that you didn't want to ask in the group or in the chat, please feel free to email me or call me. My email address is aamarshall with 1L at hartford.edu. And you can also email any one of the presenters as well. All of our information is there on the website. You can reach out to us also on Facebook and on our Instagram page as well. Jacob, do you want to tell them what the Instagram page is?
Yeah, the Instagram page is at UHartHillyer. So no spaces, no numbers or dashes, just a UHARTHILLYER.
And the college's Facebook page?
The college's Facebook page is Hillyer College, University of Hartford.
And my Facebook page is David H. Goldenberg. So feel free, join in with us, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe, be well, have fun.